Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome to session 9 of Human Resource Management course. I'm your instructor, Dr. Shikha and Khera, faculty at Delhi School of Management, Delhi Technological University. My dear students, by now you are almost 1/3 way through understanding the human resource management. If I may ask you, do you remember what other topics we have already discussed? A quick recapitulation includes, we have talked about human resource planning, recruitment, selection, training, and executive development. During that, what we have understood is that the nuances of human resource management includes not only hiring them, but also maintaining them, taking care of requirements to enhance their capabilities, skills, competencies, so that they perform better. Now, what happens when they have already shown the performance in the organization? Some evaluation, some appraisals, some positivity has to be thrown towards what they have contributed to the organization. So after training and development, I would like to highlight the concept of performance appraisal, which talks about the performance which the person or the human resource has delivered, how we can appraise that, evaluate that, and give the dues to him. So many decisions are based on the appraisal of performance. We have to decide on whom to transfer to a new unit, whom to give a promotion, who has to be made a team lead for some other division, or maybe in adverse conditions, some decisions like demotions also can be an outcome of performance appraisal. So in order to decide on these decisions effectively, correctly, we need to go ahead with right kind of appraisal in the organization. So let us have some insight on performance appraisal, its methods of appraisals, some real-time examples, how appraisal can be done. Tomorrow you are going to become managers, so you also have to appraise your subordinates or team members. So what all content you need to understand in that. So beginning of the session, I would like to highlight a concept which is based on performance appraisal, which is called as performance management. Now, before appraisal, why am I starting with performance management? Because unless we manage the performance well, how we can think of having an outcome of the performance? So outcome of performance or outcome in the form of performance has to be managed properly so that tomorrow we can appraise them. So what is performance management? It is a continuous performance improvement process where we help the individual while he is carrying out the task. We have already discussed concepts like training and executive development. So these tasks help an organization to take care of managing the performance of individuals. Its goal is to create a climate of shared understanding about what is to be achieved. So the major question here is that the goal should be clear to the individual, and then developing the people, that is with the help of training and executive development. What exactly we are doing? We are increasing the chances that the goal will be achieved by the individual and eventually by the organization. So before we go for performance appraisal, we try to have a good performance management in the organization. Now let's discuss something about performance appraisal. The concept is that it is a management tool that helps to motivate and utilize the human resource properly. Further, there are certain characteristics of performance appraisal, that the appraisal should always be in congruence with mission, vision, and philosophies of the organization. and the value system. We should not only assess the performance, rather we should also assess the potential of the individual. Now, what do we understand by the potential of individual? Potential is the capability, ability, or the competence that individuals carry. So along with performance, we also have to highlight that to what extent can we assign task to a subordinate? What kind of task can we assign to a subordinate? Because based on his capability, if it is in alignment with the task nature also, the performance outcomes are eventually effective and efficient. Also, performance appraisal has to see that it is taking care of not only the organizational needs but as well as the individual needs, and it is creating a very clean environment in the organization. How do we do it? We generally link the rewards with the achievement, because reward is something which we call as positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement helps individual to have a good kind of or greater motivation to achieve. Then we can have generating information for growth of employee as well as of the organization. This is a part of clean environment. Suggesting appropriate person task matching with the career plan, that also contributes to the positive environment. So if organization is following these practices of having rewards, of generating the information which is required for growth of employee and organization, and suggesting right kind of match between the career plan of individual and the person task, then we can have a clean environment in organization, which is must for having a good performance appraisal. Now, after the appraisal, it is not only on the part of organization that they have to conduct and appraise the performance, but it is also the obligation of the organization to tell the employee how he has performed. So the employee would like to know about the concrete and tangible particulars about the work, the correct assessment of their performance, and they would like to know that how they did the job and how they could do it in future in a better manner, because they also are interested in their own growth. How could they obtain a larger share of rewards, and how could achieve their life goals through the positions that they have held in the organization. Here the position is the position in the organization that they take care. So now let's move on to certain different performance appraisal systems. Initially, we'll talk about the traditional performance appraisal system, which is even currently followed in many organizations, especially in the government sector, what we call as confidential report or annual confidential report, where the reporting officer is there. Reporting officer is the immediate boss to whom the individual puts forth all the paperwork, where he writes down that whatever work he has done during the whole year. If it is annual, if it is biannual, then in 6 months, the individual writes down the confidential report about his work, presents that report to the reporting officer, who is his boss, and this reporting officer gives his opinion and evaluation and give him some quantified marks also on the basis of the performance done. Along with that, this report also carries some suggestive measures that the individual employee can take care of or implement in his professional way of working, by which he may improve his performance. After reporting officer, the report goes to the reviewing officer. This reviewing officer is the senior most authority generally in the organization, and this reviewing officer also adds on to any kind of strengths or weaknesses he may feel with respect to the individual under the appraisal. So this is the traditional form of appraisal. Further, in the traditional form of performance appraisal, it is linked with financial reports and other sanctions in the organization, and it is merely the evaluation process. So it doesn't have much regarding the planning for development of individuals. It is very much bureaucratic in nature, that is based on much rigid rules and regulations. It is a top-down and secretive approach, where initially employee also doesn't know what kind of appraisal has been done to him, and it is very much centralized. So after this traditional performance appraisal, let us see the graphic representation. Here you can see there is a supervisor who appraises the direct report of the employee who directly reports to him, and he gives a feedback to the employees about the performance. Also, there is a manager along with the supervisor. There is an HR department. So whole of these parties, they work together, the manager, HR department and supervisor. Who is getting appraised is the employee about how he has performed. Who designs the appraisal process is the HR department. Who reviews the appraisal results given by the supervisor. So first the supervisor gives the result, that is he appraises. Here we call him as a reporting officer. And manager here is the reviewing officer, who reviews the appraisal results sent by the supervisor, because he also has to see whether the appraisal is done positively, objectively, or there are certain subjective biases in it. Now, after traditional appraisal comes certain modern appraisals, which is defined as a more structured formal interaction between the subordinate and the supervisor, and generally they are of a periodic review, that is annual or semi-annual in nature. Here the focus is on identifying the weaknesses and strengths as well as opportunities for improvement of the skill development. There are many methods for modern appraisal that we shall be discussing. But before that, characteristics of any appraisal system includes that performance appraisal cannot be implemented successfully unless it is accepted by all concerned. So whatever appraisal system is to be followed has to be in line with or in alignment with all the structural levels in the organization. So this is what I am drawing. I have drawn an organization structure. So at all levels, it should be accepted. There should be a common and clear understanding of distinction between evaluation and appraisal in the appraisal system. In 1982, Patton argued that evaluation aims at the objective measurement, while appraisal includes both objective and subjective assessment of how well an employee has performed during the period under review. So we wish to not only have a quantified data for appraisal, that is evaluation, but we need to have a combination of objective and subjective assessment where their opinions also matter, their observations also matter. So their observations and opinion will be the subjective part of the appraisal. And the performance appraisal must take care of conditions like they have to give feedback, they have to take care of it that feedback tomorrow leads to development, and they should be fair in giving the assessment. Further characteristic says that performance appraisal should concentrate on the job of the employee, the environment of the organization, and employee himself or herself. So there are three prerequisites. First, about the job, second, about the environment, and third, about the employee. All three should be considered well during the performance appraisal. Since these three factors are very much interrelated and interdependent on each other, thus the appraisal system tomorrow can only be effective if it is individualized, subjective, qualitative, and oriented towards problem solving. This should be the approach, that if there is any problem in the employee's behavior, in employee's skill, in employee's technical knowledge, then we should resolve it rather than going towards an adverse appraisal or evaluation. Also, the performance appraisal should have measurable and very much specified and clear standards of performance, because we have to measure the performance against the standard of performance. So for example, what you used to do in your examination system, you have an exam paper hypothetically taking if it is of 100 marks. Then there is a standard that you have to pass this, or you can pass this after only if you secure 40 marks. So this 40 marks becomes the standard. And when you write your exam and the marks are allocated, the performance outcome in terms of objective evaluation, that is the marks you get, are then compared with the standard marks. So if you get say 50 out of 100, so the standard was 40, you scored little above, and then you are in a safe zone. But had you been in a situation where you scored little less than standard, then there was a gap in the performance which need to be evaluated for further investigation, that what kind of knowledge, more knowledge needs to be imparted to you so that you get higher marks tomorrow. So standards and indicators of performance appraisal includes content like mutual goals between individuals, reliable, that is mutual goal of organization versus individual, reliable and consistent performance appraisal, it is free from errors and it is giving the same results even if the settings are changed, even if the people are changed. It is equitable and accurate, taking everyone into consideration at the right common platform. It should be very much practical to implement and simple in format to understand. Regular and routine appraisal systems should be followed to give more chances to people to get or do better. Participatory and open, where the employees can also have a say and they can communicate. Always rewards to be associated with the performance appraisal for giving a motivation to the employees that they perform better. Timely feedback helps them to improve properly. If you are late in giving the feedback, probably they have now moved to some other division. Impersonal feedback, so this feedback has to do nothing with the personality who's giving or to whom you are giving. It should be only, so feedback has to be given only to the actions, not to the persons. Noticeable feedback which can be understood clearly by the subordinate. Relevance and responsiveness towards the feedback should be achieved, and commitment should be moved towards higher level after the appraisal system. The better appraisal system in place, higher is the commitment on the part of the employee, because employee also feels that my organization is very much fair and just in giving the appraisal to me, and hence I should have higher OCB towards the organization. What is it? Organizational citizenship behavior. So how can the performance appraisal system help? It helps promoting better understanding of employees' role clarity, understanding of personal strengths and weaknesses, finding out the development needs of the employee, establishing a common ground between the employee and supervisor so that there are higher interpersonal relations, or you can say better. So as to have better interpersonal relations, it increases the communication between both the parties. It provides an employee with the opportunity for self-reflection. Self-reflection is to have identification of how you have done. And help an employee internalize the culture, norms and values of the organization. By all this, whatever we are discussing just now, what we are trying to do, we are trying to create an identity of an employee in the organization, and we are trying to have enhancement in the commitment level of the employee in the organization. At the end of the day, students, we all understand we need performance, both in terms of strategic performance and financial performance of the organization, so that organization is equipped enough to come up for CSR responsibilities also, and it becomes a complete social organization. And for all this, what we need competent employees. So for these competent employees, performance appraisal is a very essential tool to enhance and improve their performance. So there are certain approaches and techniques in performance appraisal system. Let us go through the approaches and techniques. Some of these approaches are considered below based on Einstein and Le Merin-Lobento 1989 and Munger 1983 research. So these are the research scientists. Based on their research, these approaches have been identified. So the first approach is the intuitive approach. In this approach, what happens? The supervisor or manager, he judges the employee based on their perception of employee's behavior. So we can say that this intuitive approach is purely subjective. How, if I am judging you on your performance, how I perceive about you, what I think about you. Then comes self-appraisal approach. So under self-appraisal approach, employee evaluates their own performance using a common format. So this is employee's perception about himself. So that means it's the subjectivity of the employee. The earlier was the subjectivity of the supervisor. After intuitive approach and self-appraisal approach, we have group approach. So this group approach is employees evaluated by the group of persons. Then comes trait approach, which is self-explanatory, which is very conventional in nature. It is based on observable dimensions of a personality. Now, what are observable dimensions of a personality? Integrity, honesty, dependability, punctuality. So, on the basis of these values, we can evaluate every individual, and they are called as the traits of the individual. Appraisal based on achievement of the result is also carried out. This approach is also there. So in this type of approach, appraisal is based on concrete, measurable and work achievements judged and fixed as based on the targets which were set mutually by the assessor and the subordinate. So here you can identify a difference between the approaches. Appraisal based on achievement is very much objective in nature, while the approach that we studied previously, that is intuitive approach, it was purely subjective in nature. So it is based on the philosophy, value system of the leadership or the culture of the organization, what kind of approach they will take up for appraisal system, whether subjective or objective, whether individual or group. And then there is another approach which is called as a behavioral method. So this method focusing on observed behavior and critical incidents. So observed behavior is actually the behavior which employee is carrying on, which is being noted down by an observer, or any kind of additional behavior he showed which is noted down as a critical incident. So once we will be discussing about different methods of performance appraisal, we shall be handling all these approaches that we have discussed till now. So these are the methods which are also called as techniques of performance appraisal. We shall be discussing these methods in detail one by one. First is called as essay appraisal method. Now under essay appraisal method, what happens? The assessor or your boss is supposed to write an essay about how a subordinate has performed. Very subjectively, he has to mention in detail in paragraph what is his opinion, observation and perception of the performance of the employee. So by this you can find out that this essay appraisal method comes under which approach? The approach we have already discussed, the subjective one, which was intuitive approach. So here the brief essay providing the strengths, weaknesses and potential of the assessee are measured. Now, the weakness of this method itself, so this method also has a shortcoming. What is the shortcoming of this method? Because the length and content of essay vary between different assessors. Assessors here are whom? Assessors are the superiors who are assessing. So, essay ratings are difficult to compare between the different superiors or different assessors. So, that becomes a weakness of essay rating scale. Then comes graphic rating scale. The term graphic here, students, by this you can understand there is some maths now involved. Some graph is involved. So here in graphic scale assesses a person on the quality of his or her work. So we have a rating scale. Generally, what is a rating scale? We have given quantitative values to a scale. One of the very common rating scale is the Likert scale. And we associate some subjective statements with that. Say for 3, we call it as neutral. This is very good. 5 is excellent. 2 is fair. 1 is poor. So here we have associated the subjective phrases with a quantified term and in an order where it can be rated for by the supervisor. So here, as the example is given, based on the quality of the work by the subordinate, the supervisor will give a rating for every aspect. Say the aspect is communication. For communication, what is the rating? For punctuality, what is the rating, etc. So assessment could also be trait centered. These are the traits. and cover observable traits such as reliability, adaptability, communication, etc., which I have just now explained to you. So although graphic scale seems to be very simplistic in construction, but they have applications in wide variety of job responsibilities and more consistent and reliable in comparison with essay appraisal, the one we just now finished understanding before this. So it has more consistency and reliability. So organizations prefer graphic rating scale over essay method. If this method, graphic rating scale, is used along with essay appraisal technique, then probably the usage or this conjunction enhances the output of these two methods. So this is an example of graphic rating scale. Here you can see some general information about the employees, which we call as demographic data, is given. Then rating identification, that what does O, V, G, etc. mean, and after that O, V, G are written here, boxes are given, checkbox to tick mark, and some kind of range of marks or quantifying scale is also given. And here on the left hand side, different qualities or the factors on which judgment is to be made. So for example, the first is quality, the accuracy, thoroughness and acceptability of work performed by the employee. As a superior, you will try to give him some marks. Maybe if you are giving him marks out of 100, say 72. So 72 will fall in the category of good. So you will tick here and you may write some statements here which supports that why he deserves 72. So that goes for other factors also like reliability, job knowledge, productivity, etc. Another example of graphic rating scale here is, you can see these are dimensions on which the person can be rated, and these are the scale parameters. So this is an example. For example, say it's Raju, department is management, job title is supervisor. So he has been rated with respect to attendance fairly good, behavior towards subordinate is also good, sincerity is good, and dependability is excellent. The third method is called as field review method. Now in this field review method, in the previous it was in the graphic rating scale we had discussed about that your immediate supervisor will rate you. But in field review method, what happens? The supervisor rates the subordinate. It is a little in addition to the previous graphic rating scale, but someone from HR department will then assess the supervisor's assessment about an employee. So here the role of HR department also comes into picture, and the supervisor who has already evaluated now is questioned by the HR department or HR department representative on what basis he has given the appraisal or what are the pointers the supervisor wants to highlight about the subordinate. So field review method to overcome assessor rated biases. Why assessor rated biases? Because the one who's your immediate boss might have encountered some kind of challenging situations also with you. Maybe someday you fell in argument with him, or maybe someday you refused to work or you came late. So due to certain instances, he may have his personal grudge towards the individual, and because of that grudge, he may distort the performance appraisal of that person. So in order to overcome, this is called as subjective error in the assessment, or we call it assessor related biases. So because of this, to overcome this, a new method called field review method came into existence, where the essay and graphic rating techniques can be combined together in a systematic process. Now, as I have explained, a member from HR staff meets a small group of assessors from the supervisory units to discuss each rating systematically and identifying areas of inter-assessor disagreement, if any. By this mechanism, it helps each assessor to perceive the standards uniformly. So this is important. Uniformity in the standard also comes, And though field review assessment is considered very much valid and reliable, but it is very time consuming. So we all know any kind of challenge or limitation is inevitable. Every phenomena has some limitations to it, some challenges to it. Same is with field review method, that it consumes time, but it is still, in terms of correctness of evaluation, it is little higher than essay rating method and the graphic rating scale. Then comes forced choice rating method. Now, what is forced choice rating method? It does not involve discussion with the supervisor. Now, the person who is going to be analyzed doesn't fall into any kind of discussion. Although this technique has several variations, the most common method is to force the assessor to choose the best and worst fit statements from a group of statements. So a group of statements are made by the HR department in a performance appraisal form, and out of which the supervisor has to choose the statement which fits best for the subordinate. So there is a group of statement. One statement will be best fit, the other statement may be worst fit. So he has to identify the best and the worst fit statements and give the weight or score, some quantified score to each statement in the end for evaluation purpose. So the scores and weights assigned to individual statement are not revealed to the assessor so that she or he cannot favor any individual. So I'll just show you the graphic for it. For example, this is the graphic representation of forced choice checklist method. Here we have statements like always regular, informs in advance, never regular, remain absent without prior notice, neither regular nor irregular. So students, there are some weights given to the weights, or you can say quantified marks given to each statement. Hypothetically, say if it is 3, 5, 7, 4, 2, 1, whatever, these marks are not shown to or known to the supervisor. Supervisor is not aware, or let us say whosoever is the assessor, he is not aware about the marks. He just has to put the statement which is most likely and which is the least likely of the individual. Like in this scenario, the assessor has assessed the assessee that always regular, most likely very regular, informs in advance, most likely he does that, remains absent without prior notice, it's highly unlikely, and neither regular or irregular, it is also highly unlikely. So this means this particular employee for which this forced choice checklist has been made is quite a sincere employee. Fifth method is critical incident appraisal method. Now, critical incident appraisal method, what happens? The assessor keeps a check over any critical incident that the employee performs. So, if it is a sales desk or a customer sales service or a teller, any service oriented, and a customer comes, the employee is very arrogant with that individual while performing the job. So this is a very unique and critical incident that is taking place. The assessor will note down this unique incident. Then tomorrow maybe some other employee goes an extra mile to help the customer. This is also a critical incident, and this will also be noted by the concerned supervisor. So supervisor will collect over a period of time, say 3 months or 6 months, different critical incidents that the employee has performed during his job. And after that time of 6 months, 3 months, or annually, whatever is the system of organization for appraisal, these critical incidents are then discussed with the employee. Now here the drawback is, let us talk about the positive part of it. The positive part of critical incident is the actual behavior is known and seen by both the supervisor and the subordinate or the person for appraisal. But the negative side of it is that the incident took place long back. Telling about it and correcting it after 6 months probably does not give much or does not solve much of its purpose. He may have repeated that wrong behavior over the time also and might have disturbed the brand image of organization. So what is then to do? We may think of giving that in a short span rather than keeping the information for a longer duration. So as I told you, the discussion focuses on actual behavior rather than on the traits of the employee. Earlier we talked about traits like punctuality, communication, reliability, accuracy, etc. But here how actually he performed and behaves into picture. So this is the positivity of or the strength of critical incident appraisal method. But as I told you that delay in feedback takes place, as you tell, after 6 months or so. So it makes little sense to wait for 6 months to discuss any kind of misdeed or mistake or good display of initiative, both whether it is a negative behavior or whether it is a positive behavior. If it is not reinforced properly or corrected at the right time and the time lapses, the person will not able to understand what went wrong and how he has to perform correctly. So this is a sample example for critical incident appraisal. I'll just take up one here. Meanwhile, you can see others. You may read on your screen as well. So the first incident here talks about greeted the customer shortly after entering the store and was very friendly. So this was the critical incident. Whether this behavior was effective, yes or no? Yes, the behavior was effective. And why it was effective? Because allowed a connection to be made with the customer as soon as he entered. So here you can see that this is how critical incidents are identified and then further decided whether this incident is right incident or misdeed or it is a positive incident. Next comes management by objective. Now management by objective we have studied in the previous sessions during the introduction part. What does it mean? It means that the larger mission and broader objectives of the organization are broken down into smaller objectives in a hierarchical order, and these objectives are jointly decided by the supervisor and the subordinate. Now since they decided jointly, so there is no question of any kind of concern on the part of employee that the goal has been reinforced on us. Here, the positive part is that the employee takes care of his own self-direction, that in which direction he is going to take up the assignment at his own pace. And this objective becomes the standard or comparison statement for the actual performance that the employee has to take. So if I may explain, as we have already discussed this previously, this is a objective. We call it at MBO1. Then once it finishes, the employee moves on to MBO2. Then employee moves on to MBO3. Now each MBO becomes a standard statement. Standard statement for evaluation, or what we call as performance evaluation here. So this method is currently widely used but not always in true spirit, because even though the employees are consulted, so this is the negative part of the MBO, in many cases management ends up by imposing its own standards and objectives to the employees. Next appraisal method is work standard approach. Now in this technique, management establishes the goals openly, sets the targets against the realistic output standards. Unlike MBO we were doing what? In MBO, we were focusing on having joint goal settlement. But in work standard approach, it is the goal established by the management. And then these goals which were established by the management become the standards for the appraisal by the organization. Here, each employee has a clear understanding of his duties and he knows what is expected of him. Now, in performance appraisal and interview comments are related to these duties only, that this was your duty number 1, 2, 3, 4. Have you completed this, not completed this, or completed this? So this makes the appraisal process very objective and more accurate. However, again, it has a limitation. It is difficult to compare individual rating because standards for work may differ from job to job. Now, there are certain ranking methods based on work by Oberg 1972 or Moga 1983, which says that let us rank the employees in the organization during the appraisal system so that we can decide on what decision further to be taken for each employee. The one who are in higher rankers will be given promotion. The one in the lower ranker may not be given increments or may be demoted also. So first ranking method is the alteration ranking method. Now in alteration ranking method, what happens? The individual with the best performance is chosen as the ideal employee. Now if you have chosen A as the ideal employee, now each and every employee is then compared to A and one position is given to that employee in the list. So this is called as alternatively the assessor is ranking the individuals. How is it done? See the graphic here for alternate ranking method. So here the highest ranking employee, for example, is John. So each other employee then is, we go for the lowest ranking employee name also here, say Joey. So now we have to see that between 1 and 20, whatever name comes in, we start putting them at different places with respect to the two in the picture, the lowest ranking employee and the highest ranking employee. Rest can be put into based on comparison between the two. That is why it is called as alteration ranking method, not a simple ranking method. Then comes a paired comparison method. Now in paired comparison method, we have a comparison between two individuals on a common trait. Now what is comparison between two individuals on a common trait? So if the trait is quality of work and there are two individuals, John and Joey, so we give positive and negative with respect to that individual and the trait that they have, the trait under consideration. Who is better than whom? So if John is better than Joey, John will have positive and Joey will have negative trait there. Let us see this paired comparison with the help of a graph. So here the trait that has been taken in the example is quality of work. Quality of work is compared between four individuals. Here you will see individual A, Art, B, Maria, C, Chuck, D, Diane and E, Jose. Same are written on the other axis also. Now every individual is compared to the other individual. That's why it is called as paired comparison. We compare in a pair. So we don't compare individual with the individual. That's not possible. So here we are comparing A with B. So that means B has a positive trait, then A, then C with A positive, then D with A, D has a negative trait, and E with A, E has a negative trait. When comparing B with A is negative, C with A is negative. When D with A is positive, E with A is positive. Now here negative positive means better than or not better than. So here A is better than D, B is better than A. In the end, whatever number of positives and negatives any employee gets after this paired comparison, we check the number of positives and we declare the highest ranker individual. Like in this case, the highest number of positives are achieved by Maria. So for quality of work trait, Maria is the highest ranker. For creativity trait, who is the highest ranker? Let us see. So for creativity, A is the highest ranker. Why? Because A is better than B, A is better than C, A is better than D, and A is better than E when it comes to creativity. Okay. So this is how we compare and we identify any negative or worse than or better than employee with respect to certain traits. Then comes person-to-person rating method. Now under person-to-person rating scale, what happens? That the actual individual is known to all the assessor and are used as series of standards. So here we use actual human being or employee as a series of standards. So these standards may be defined as lowest, low, middle, high or highest performer. So we have to give name to these. So for example, lowest performer is Joey, low performer is Art, middle performance is Jonna, high performer is by Bean, and the highest performer is by Cat. So this is how names or individuals are associated rather than a rating scale. Students, if you remember, these were certain parameters for the rating scale that we have discussed earlier. So rather than the rating scale here or giving any kind of quantitative statement, here we have assigned names of individuals and one person is compared to the other person when it comes to identifying which factor he falls into. So individual employees in the group are then compared with the individual used as standards. These are the names of standard employees: Joey, Art, Jonah, Bean and Cat. They represent the lowest performer, low performer, middle performer, high performer and highest performer respectively. The advantage of this rating scale is that the standards are concrete and are in terms of real individuals. But the disadvantage of this standard is set by different assessors may be not consistent, because this scale which an individual assessor will make may vary from individual to individual. Maybe for assessor 1, Joey is the lowest performer. For assessor 2, Art can be the lower performer. So thus, because of this inconsistency, this scale is not very much in use. Then comes a checklist method. So just checklist method, let us understand with the help of a simple graphic. It is the most simplest and most effective method. Here we give two options, yes or no, which we have to tick mark. An excessive number of negative responses indicate that the training is needed for an employee. So for example, in checklist method, there are a lot of statements. We just have to mark yes or no with respect to every individual. So if the statement is regular on the job, you have to mark either yes or no. Does maintain discipline well, whether yes or no. Shows consistent behavior to all colleagues, yes or no. So based on these answers, the number of yes or number of no that we have will give us an idea whether we have to go take this individual further for training or not. Then comes behaviorally anchored rating scale. Now, in behaviorally anchored rating scale, we have different behaviors which are already identified, and these behaviors are also called as anchors. And these anchors are then for every individual identified, that whether that individual, and these anchors are given some quantified number also, say 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll just show you the graphic for this. So this is the behaviorally anchored rating scale. There is a statement and this is called as an anchor. Every behavior is called as an anchor. Can expect trainee to make valuable suggestions for increased sales and to have positive relationships with customers all over the country. If this is the anchor, this is the behavior we can expect, then there are 7 points to it and the performance is extremely good. And if the behavior is can expect to take extended coffee breaks and roam around purposelessly in the organizational building, then the points associated with it 1 and it is extremely poor performance. So behaviorally anchored rating scale is primarily based on the qualities like interpersonal relationship, planning, organizing ability, adaptability and reliability. It was developed by Smith and Kendall. Then comes assessment centers. Students' assessment centers are not generally, by the term, what do you feel? You feel that there is a place because it includes term center in it, and at that place assessment takes place. No, that's not the case. Assessment centers are a series of exercises that an individual has to undergo. Generally, this is done at a senior positions to assess their performances. Assessment center can range from 1 day to 6 to 7 days of exercise. Assessment center is also used for recruitment purpose as well as for the performance appraisal purpose. Let us look into certain theoretical aspects. So here it is used to predict the future performance of employees where they need to be promoted tomorrow. And the assessment is done on how the individual works in a group as well as an individual assignment. So from both the perspective, performance is judged. And the judgment of observer is then later on pooled and a pair comparison or alternate ranking is combined with the assessment center. Since there are multiple observers in assessment center, on the basis of their assessment and further addition of any other performance appraisal method, the final observation or judgment of the observer comes into picture. What are the, it was developed in 1956 by the psychologist Douglas Bray and implemented the first industrial use, since it's of practical use of assessment centers as part of research study involving AT&T company. What is done in assessment center? As I told you, these are series of exercises. So under these series of exercises, we have group discussions. I hope you all know when people join are made to sit together. They are given with a task and they have to discuss on that. They may advocate the statement or they may be in opposition of the concept. Then the second exercise is interview simulation. So in simulation, it is a role play kind of simulation where the facilitator will give a chance to the individual to behave as an interviewer. So it is to test the candidate's ability to establish rapport with the individuals. Then comes in-basket exercises. In-basket exercises include candidates are required to handle and process simulated correspondence, and then they are expected to draw overall strategic lessons and set the directions to handle the matter. So by this, it is tried to identify that how well are they in strategy building. Then analysis exercises talk more about the critical thinking part of an individual. To judge the critical thinking, analysis exercises are there. To judge the strategic aspect, in-basket exercises are there. To judge their ability to establish rapport, in simulation, interview simulation is given, and for group discussion, it is more on to see whether they can advocate, they are extroverts, they can speak about the given topic or not. Now, so that means what are the components of appraisal format? First, we have to identify the key performance areas. Then we have to identify the qualities for job performance which are needed, because they will tomorrow become the parameters to be judged. So they will become the parameters to be judged. So they have to be carefully chosen. Then self-appraisal, analysis and discussion of post-appraisal, identification of training need based on the appraisal, and what action plan and goal setting for next round or next year to be identified, and final assessment to be taken. So there are these attributes, students, which can be taken or considered in evaluating performance. Like for any kind of physical work, it can be stamina. For any kind of communication work, written and verbal expression of writing. For any kind of challenging job, tenacity, where it is found that how they handle the challenges. For leadership role, their initiative behavior and their decisiveness. Then for some performance qualities include far-sightedness for leadership, motivation for leadership, and control for leadership positions. Then what kind of professional knowledge and administrative knowledge they have for the managerial positions, etc. So these are judged on the basis of or for the kind of job we are going to do the performance appraisal for. So now let's have some discussion on the uses of performance appraisal. Though I am sure by now you have understood what are the benefits of having performance appraisal. Here we have employees understand more about their role. So when there is a role clarity, hence they perform better. They are now not in ambiguity and they know which is the direction they have to follow. Then it helps in identifying the development needs of employees. So with the help of right kind of performance appraisal, we can have right need analysis of training, and with right need analysis of training, we can impart the correct training and improve the right parameters within the individual's performance or actions. Then it increases mutuality. So when performance appraisal is fair and just, the output is that there is good interpersonal relation between the subordinate and the superior. So students, you have to understand the takeaways, that why we need to focus so much on performance appraisal, because they are the benefits of having right appraisal or effective appraisal in organization. It also acts as a mechanism for increasing communication between the employee and the supervisors. So in this way, each employee gets to know the expectation of their supervisor, and each supervisor also gets to know the difficulties of their subordinates. So by this, they have better communication between each other. Then it also provides employees with a self-reflection and individual goal-setting opportunity. So with the appraisal results, the subordinates get to know what are the shortcomings in their performance, and then they are, if the management gives them a chance or administration gives them a chance, they can self-direct themselves to improve also, which will be a greater motivation. Performance appraisal outcome also includes employee internalize the culture, norms, values of the organization after the appraisal. Thus, they develop a good amount of commitment and their self-identity in the organization. It also prepares the employees for higher responsibility. So what comes to mind when we talk about higher responsibility? The term is called as succession planning. So with the help of right performance appraisal, we can have identification of successor also that gives benefit for the career planning of the individuals. It is also instrumental in creating a positive and healthy environment in organization. That is inevitable. If we have all other things in place, we will have definitely a healthy climate and assist in variety of personal decisions. Now, what do we mean by personal decisions here? As I began session by saying that we have to take decisions like transfers, promotion, demotion, retrenchment, etc. Thus, such decisions can be facilitated if we have good kind of performance appraisal in the organization. Now, I am sharing some kind of performance appraisal feedback examples with you students. Please listen to these examples very carefully. Here, how a manager's position can get feedback and what he has to reflect on it, and other positions also. So, if it is a manager or a team lead position, then we can give the feedback as consistently demonstrates exceptional leadership by motivating the team, setting clear goals, fostering collaborative work environment, has a strong strategic vision and effectively translates it into actionable plans. When it comes to meets expectations, so outstanding were these characteristics. So we talked about the characteristics which were outstanding. When we have to talk something about that just meets the expectation but not outstanding, so manages team resources well and ensures tasks are completed on time and within scope, communicates effectively with team members and maintains a positive team atmosphere. So he meets the expectations with respect to these parameters. And now comes the areas where he needs some improvement. So should focus on delegating tasks and effectively rather than taking on too many responsibilities himself. He should know that his job is to delegate, not to perform himself, and needs to improve conflict resolution within the team. So this is, you understood how managers can be appraised or evaluated in the end subjectively, and the kind of feedback should be shared with them. Then for a position of software developer and engineer, you can see in the outstanding category, it says delivers clean, efficient, scalable code ahead of deadlines, often going beyond requirements, shows initiative by suggesting innovative solutions and contributing to architectural improvements. So these are the brighter sides of its work. Then meets expectation when it comes to writing reliable codes and consistently meeting the goals which were set. But the areas where he needs improvement includes, he needs improvement in code quality, reduce the number of bugs in the releases, and should focus on better understanding project requirements before development begins. So here, students, could you see that with respect to software developer or engineer field, the terminology is changed because the roles were different. So they were assessed on different parameters and thus their strengths and improvement areas also differed. Now comes customer service representative. For customer service representative, an example which says that the representative was outstanding in consistent exceeding customer satisfaction and the targets, received positive feedback from the client, and he handled challenging customers well. He met the expectations with respect to customer queries, promptly resolving most issues and maintaining very courteous and helpful attitude. While the areas that he needs improvement in on his response time, follow-up procedure, and should focus on developing better listening skills, since he has to listen to the demands of the customer properly first. If he doesn't listen to the demand of the customer first properly, how will he respond and react to that demand in a professional manner? For a sales executive also, we have an example. So for sales executive, the outstanding things can be consistently exceed sales target, identifies new market opportunities, builds strong relationships. And with respect to meeting expectation, he meets the sale targets and demonstrates good negotiation skills. While the areas of improvement, we can suggest him to improve in conversion rates and also should focus on following up with potential leads. I'm sure students, you are understanding these examples well. For administrative assistant, he demonstrates exceptional organizational skills and implements new systems which leads to higher efficiency. He meets the expectation of keeping the schedules, files and office operations and runs them smoothly, while the area of improvement is attention to the detail when preparing the documents and should enhance the time management skills so that he meets the deadlines well. Then comes the marketing specialist. Marketing specialist is very good in innovative campaigns and he results in measuring ROI also. While he meets expectation that creates executive campaigns and collaborates effectively with the sales and design teams, that is his positive trait or characteristic, but he needs improvement in analytical aspect of the campaigns and should focus more on aligning the campaigns closely with the company goals. With a teacher or a trainer, engages the students with creative teaching methods, improved learning outcome of the students, and he goes beyond the curriculum to nurture the critical and thinking skills. Delivers the session effectively, ensures the students have understood the concept and promotes the supportive learning environment. But the improvement improves classroom management techniques and should provide more constructive feedback to the learners. So similarly, we have project manager also, who delivers the project on time, who anticipates potential obstacles, leads project from conception to delivery, but needs improvement in scheduling and resource allocation and must communicate project updates. So this is how, through different examples, we have tried to identify what or kind of feedback we can give to different job roles and responsibilities, the improvement areas, how we can tell them, the areas where they meet the expectation and areas where they are outstanding. So this is all from my side for this particular session, which is based on performance appraisal. This is the bibliography which I have referred to for today's session. You may also look into these books and get more insight on the syllabi for performance appraisal. This is all. I close the session now. Thank you all for listening.